Jasmine Crockett thought this was her time to shine. Maybe not.
I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people.
You don't like certain speech, the best speech for wrong speech is more speech. The best speech for false speech is true speech.
During a House hearing, Jasmine argued for speech restrictions while going off on her usual tangents. But Jim Jordan stepped in, cut through the noise, shutting her whole theatrics down. And today, we're covering it all. So let's jump right into it.
I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people, because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to, and people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual, and I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it, because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis.
We'll let Trump answer the fact-checking about the debates at the end of the video. Just know this. The moderators in these debates acted more like partisan hacks than neutral journalists. Now, one point Jasmine raised that I want to expand on is the fact that under the Biden administration, you had the Surgeon General, the CDC, and multiple other three-letter agencies contact social media companies to remove content they described as, quote, misinformation during the pandemic. That led to actual doctors and researchers being shadow banned or outright deplatformed for saying things the government didn't like. But since they're not late-night hosts, Jasmine and the broader Democratic Party are okay with that. Obviously, Jim Jordan wasn't about to let these theatrics slide, and he pushed back hard. Take a look.
I yield to the chairman.
I just wanted to make a point. We've talked, generally, the previous speaker talked about factual information. We've talked about fact-checking. Fact-checking. You know what fact-checking is truly supposed to be in this country? The First Amendment, not some expert who can sit on and look at posts and tweets and different things and say, oh, that's not factual, take it down. That's not how it works. Fact-checking is the First Amendment. Someone says something stupid, and that happens every day in this Congress. Someone says something crazy. Someone says something that's not quite true, not quite accurate. You know what the fact-check is? Someone says something else, and you have debate. That's what we do in this committee every day. And this is the committee who's supposed to protect that fundamental fact. Real fact-checking is the First Amendment. Our Supreme Court has been clear about that. You don't like certain speech, the best speech for wrong speech is more speech. The best speech for false speech is true speech. That's how it works. You have a debate, and you trust we, the people, to figure it out, not some expert.
Exactly. This whole idea of government fact-checking turns into a chicken or the egg dilemma pretty quickly. First of all, if you're going to rely on experts to decide what's true, what makes anyone think they'll be free from bias? They're human, just like everyone else. Then there's the bigger question. Who actually picks these so-called arbiters of truth? Is it the government? We've already seen how that played out under Biden, on top of what's currently unfolding across Europe, so it's definitely not a smart idea. Jim Jordan went on to give real examples that prove this point, laying them out for Jasmine to hear. But before we get into that, we have a quick message from today's sponsor. If you've been following the channel, you already know we've been tracking Saga Metals, trading as SAGMF in the US and Saga in Canada. In January, we broke down their large-scale drill program in Labrador and how it aligned with the US push for domestic critical minerals. Now things are accelerating. In just 4 weeks, the company made a major leap. They surpassed expectations and delivered a perfect 36 out of 36 drill results. Then they took it a step further by locking in another titanium asset in the same district as the world's largest titanium mine. And here's what stands out. They scooped it from under Rio Tinto, a top 5 global mining giant worth over $100 billion. If they were targeting the same ground, this clearly is not random. Now, remember, titanium is no longer just an industrial metal. It plays a real key role in national defense. Fighter jets, radar systems, and advanced naval tech all depend on it. That's why the US is putting serious capital behind securing supply chains, including Project Vault, which brings $12 billion into stockpiling, with another $30 billion aimed at boosting production. So, where does Saga land? Right in the middle. Policy support is building, capital is flowing, and demand keeps rising. This goes beyond mining. It is geopolitics in action, and Saga is positioning itself to build a major titanium presence in North America. So, if you want the full breakdown, check the link in the description. Special thanks to Saga Metals for making today's video possible.
And we saw this in the Biden administration. We're seeing it in Europe now. We're seeing it in Brazil. That was the first bill we dealt with from the gentleman from California, his good legislation that we all agreed on. We're going to work on and put a good bill on the floor. So that's the key. That's what and we know it happened because, again, we had the guy who runs one of the biggest companies in the world, most successful tech companies in the world, tell us it happened. We had on the third day of the Biden administration an email from the White House to Twitter saying, take down this tweet ASAP. The government telling a business to take down a tweet, and the tweet, ironically, was from RFK Jr., who was going to be running for president against the guy in the White House. So he was saying, take down the speech of my opponent. That's not how it's supposed to work in this country. That's what we're concerned about. That's why it's in our oversight plan. And if you want additional things to look at, again, put them in your viewpoints. We're happy to accept them.
Yeah, that's how it should work. Just to put into perspective the level of censorship we saw under Biden, we're talking about nearly every major platform we currently use. For instance, Zuckerberg admitted the White House pressured Facebook to take down content during the pandemic. Then came the, quote, Twitter files, which exposed the behind-the-scenes chatter on removing Trump from the platform, on top of burying the Hunter Biden laptop story. Even YouTube wasn't immune, with channels being taken down over what was labeled misinformation. When you put all that together, it paints a clear picture of coordinated influence across platforms. Now, it may not have fully formed into a Big Brother system, but the intention was there. When it comes to fact-checking during debates, Trump talked about it in detail during an appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he made some valid points.
I think that David Muir and that woman that was aside, I never even heard of her, but they kept interrupting me. It was like, I said, how many people am I debating here? I got this one and I got you two. But he went after me 11 different times. You know, it's interesting. I always thought he was a nice guy, but he's just like the rest of them, you know?
Well, that's his job, unfortunately, and I'm
No,
sure
but not when they're
what they
wrong.
want. You're right. Well, the problem was they fact-checked you and they didn't fact-check her. And
Not
one of the
at
most
all.
egregious examples of that was when she said that there are no troops right now deployed in
Yeah.
war zones.
Yeah.
There's a very famous viral video that went online of troops in a war zone saying, well, what the fuck are we then? Because there's thousands of them.
Joe, when I said crime is soaring, he said, no, crime has gone down. I said, where did you hear that one? Crime has gone down. I mean, I'm debating with this guy, but I've had that.
Well, there was amended FBI statistics that came out after that
Yeah.
showed that crime had gone up substantially.
And by the way, the statistics were a fraud.
I know ideological capture is an overused term, but it perfectly explains our media landscape. See, there are plenty of other examples when it comes to the presidential and vice presidential debates, which proves how quickly fact-checking can go off track when bias gets involved. And that's the core issue. Once the process itself is skewed, the outcome won't reflect the truth. Yet Jasmine seems fine with that, because the current setup works in her favor rather than actually getting to the facts. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, keep thinking.